What I heard was that the desires, no matter where they came from, whether they came from my little self or now from a different dimension of my being, that they all brought me home. And they're
Mm,
all about learning to co-create more clearly with the source, with God.
wow. In that definition of the little self and the big self, do you see any challenges, at least in the natural, when it comes to, maybe it's the spiritual ego or the um, just being a wild child, let's put it that way, which I know you have been.
Yes, well, I've been very willful. I had to kind of be willful to make my way to survive, really, in the environment I grew up. Um, but the will became at first a detriment because the little self thought it knew how to make me happy. It knew how
Mm,
to fulfill my desires. And the problem was that the inner child who was abused didn't really trust God, didn't know God had my back, so I had to learn and teach myself to trust by seeing it again and again. It's as if God wooed me and finally, finally won me over. That part that was always scared and hiding and not trusting. And when that happens, is the best thing that could ever happen in anybody's life.
mm. Well, like all of us, because I know you grew up in Germany, and somehow you translated here to the United States and ended up in Alaska. Really? That's what
Yeah,
you picked?
yeah, that's what I picked. As far away from fences and walls and limitations and civilization as I could.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I just, coming out of Germany, you can imagine what the atmosphere was right after the war. I was born, and it was just so heavy, and there was so much violence in the culture and so much pressure and oppression that I just wanted to be free. So that's why I picked Alaska. There was no rules there. I could just move to the
That's
mountains and be with
wide
nature
open. Oh my
and heal
God.
my heart and spirit with nature.
In your meditating on this, because you have a very mystic background, and you love all the streams of spirituality, and it comes out through your playing your guitar and your synthesizer. You're very well scripted, but I also know you're a great teacher. So, in your definition of desires, what have you learned?
Well, I really had to clarify desires, and I found that in my contemplation that there's different kinds of desires, and one I identified was ego desire, and that was purely from just wanting to be a better, happier ego entity. And then I identified negating desires, which is actually, for my experience, to be different than it is. So when I put resistance to life, how it was, I wanted it to be different, or I had a craving for something. So it was either aversion or craving. And in either those movements of the mind, there is tension and there is no fulfillment there's no satisfaction in that. Not that it's wrong, we learn through
Oh, I
everything,
agree.
but there was a lot of tension in that. And then then I also discovered there are soul desires, which are the desires for the divine, for growth, for more wholeness, and for more happiness.
Mhm.
And and then another desire I identified was the desire for surrender and the willingness to surrender completely to the divine. And
That
that's
was
when
probably a
we,
hard one.
yeah, that
You know,
I had to try out all the other ones too and dance with them before this one emerged more. And it's when we stop to try to do it my way and we say finally, thy will be done. And
mm,
having realized that the little ego entity doesn't really know how to fulfill itself or how to figure out life, we just get worn out. So it's really a matter of maturing, of growing into greater wisdom through kind of the hard knocks of in my case, of my experience, of my life experience. And they led to an inner knowing that just all events in my life created my particular divine pathway and have brought me to what I would call purified desire. And that's when all I want is to harmonize with God's will. So my will and thy will is one.